Hey friends, Justin here, and I'm about to start a 2-day backpacking trip. And on this trip, I want to really talk with you guys about navigation. I get questions about how I plan my trips and then navigate those trips all the time, and I understand why. Not being confident in your planning and then navigation skills can lead to a lot of anxiety on the trail. And there's 3 reasons I think this trip in particular is going to be great to talk with you guys about navigation. First up, it's in an area of the Canadian Rockies that I'm not super familiar with. I haven't been down this valley before, so it's going to be new to me. And I know for a lot of you out there, going to a new area can be pretty stressful. Second, there's a lot of trails in here that connect and a lot of intersections, and I'm going to have to be on my game to make sure I'm taking the right trail and not getting lost when I'm out there. Third up, I'm going to have to do a little bit of off-trail navigation right at the end of today in order to get to my campsite. And that campsite should be pretty cool. It's going to be at the base of some frozen waterfalls. So let's hit the trail and I'll start dropping some tips on how to plan and navigate your trips so that you're more confident and comfortable. First things first is how I actually plan the route that I'm gonna be going on for a trip. And I use a web-based app called Gaia GPS on my computer to plan my trips. It has a whole bunch of trails on it, and I'll use that in order to plan the route that I'm gonna be going on. I really like Gaia because it has all the trails on there, but then you can also create custom routes using that network of trails in order to make a customized trip. And then once you have your route determined, it'll tell you what the distance is, as well as the elevation gain and loss over the course of the route. Gaia GPS also has a phone app, and the phone app and the web-based app sync over your account, which is super useful. Once I have the route determined, I'll go on my phone and download it. If you have the Gaia GPS subscription, then you can download the maps for offline use, which is really nice because I can just stick my phone into airplane mode and then still navigate using the phone app. If the Gaia app seems interesting to you, you can go to GaiaGPS.com/JustinOutdoors and they'll give you 20% off a subscription. The last step, once I've kind of planned my trip, is really the way that I navigate the most when on trail, and that's using my Garmin Fenix watch. So I have here the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro, and I can upload maps onto here using Gaia on my phone. I can just send it to the Garmin app, and then the Garmin app sends it to my watch. It's actually a really seamless process. And then I have a colored topo map on my watch that I can use to navigate with. When I'm planning trips, I also like to use the app AllTrails. I use this for the trip reports. It's not my favorite navigation tool, not even close. I don't find it reliable at all, but I do find the trip reports for certain trails to be a really good source of information. For a trip like this, I was able to go on AllTrails and see that people have done this trail recently. So I knew I wasn't gonna have to be breaking trail through deep snow, and that was something that helped me prepare what I was going to bring. So I just am wearing my boots and didn't bring my snowshoes at all. Those trip reports can also be super useful for giving you information like, has there been a rock slide and a detour around that? Or is the trail flooding? Is it super wet? Are there a lot of muddy spots due to horses going on and poo everywhere? This is just good information that I like to get before heading out on a trip. That being said, take AllTrails information with a grain of salt because I have ran across inaccurate trip reports or trip reports that are for the wrong trail. So definitely do your due diligence and make sure that the information that you're reading makes sense for the trail that you're going to be going on. When you're planning your trip and you're looking at the maps on Gaia, another thing that you should make sure that you're doing at that time is memorize the landmarks that you're going to be encountering on the trip. I know that I'm following this river, the Evan Thomas Creek, because I made sure to note that the trail follows the creek really closely the entire way. Then I knew that I should not take that little fork in the road back there that goes into the forest, and that I should head this way and follow the creek. And I'd know that even if I wasn't using my map and navigation tools like my watch. Any sort of water feature is a great landmark. Rivers, big lakes, things that show up on the map like that, as well as even cliff bands. If you see a lot of contour lines really close together, then that's probably an indicator of a cliff. And there's another little feature related to landmarks that I'm going to touch on that's very important, but we'll hike a little bit before we go into that tip. Looks like I might have some running water at the campsite. This next tip has to do with something that doesn't get talked about very often, but there's a lot of people who are really big advocates for it, and that's the paper map. I'm not the biggest advocate for paper maps because honestly I prefer navigating using my watch and my cell phone, but there are definitely some situations where a paper map comes in handy. The first one being if all of your electronics somehow die at once. Maybe there's an electromagnetic pulse that kills all electronics, including your battery bank and all the backups that you have. But the main benefit I see of having a paper map is a little bit more practical, and that has to do with being able to mark up a paper map. Guide is really nice because you can save your map as a PDF, and then depending on the PDF software that you're using, you can mark up the map. So what I like to do is I circle a lot of the main landmarks. So if there's a river, I may highlight that. If there's a lake, I might circle that. And then you can make notes as well on the map. So you can make a note as far as, okay, make sure to take this left turn. Or the lake that you're gonna use as a landmark is more like a marsh or a swamp. And because of that, you may have missed it if you hadn't taken that note on your map. And then once you mark up that PDF, you can print it off and take it with you. It weighs pretty much nothing. Or if you want to, if you're more old school, you can mark up the map by hand after you've printed it off. An example of where this has been handy for me is that I was going on a trip and I'd read some trip reports that said there was a turn that was really easy to miss because of some fallen trees. So I made note of that spot on the map. And then I also made a little note beside the landmark of what kilometer that was at. And then as I was navigating with my watch, I was able to see, okay, I've gone 5 kilometers and I know that this turn that's easy to miss is at kilometer 5. So I was able to keep an eye out for those fallen trees and hit the trail that I was supposed to be on. So we made it to the spot that I wanted to camp tonight. This frozen waterfall behind me is called the Big Green Monster. You can probably guess why. And it's really packed down around here because of all the people that come and visit the waterfall, as well as, I'm guessing, go ice climbing on it. So there wasn't as much off-trail travel as I thought there was going to be at the tail end of today, but I do get a really nice campsite. I'm going to be getting camp set up, and then as I do so, I'll show you guys some of the gear that I brought on this trip that I'm testing out. And tomorrow we're going to go over more navigation stuff, and it's things that I think are even more interesting. It's the more micro navigation, as I call them, things that are going to keep you from getting lost when you're on your trip, as well as help you be more efficient when you're traveling. And while I'm sitting here, I guess I can talk about one of the pieces of gear that I'm testing out on this trip, and that's the Waymark light pack. So this is a frameless pack. It does have a hip belt, but there's no frame in the back. And this is the first time that I'm really using a frameless pack with a lot of weight in it. I have probably about 27, 28 pounds in it, and it's doing really well. The hip belt actually works just like a regular hip belt on a framed pack. I have the pack loaded pretty well, and it's transferring the weight to my hips effectively. So we got the REI Passage 2 tent set up. This is a new tent for me for 2021. I wanted to test this out because it comes in a really neat bundle package from REI that includes this tent, a sleeping pad that I'm also trying out tonight, and then a sleeping bag. And it's all at a very, very good price. I wanted to see if that package is worth it for me to recommend you guys to either buy for yourself if you're just getting into backpacking, or something that you can get for a friend or family member who doesn't have any gear and wants to get into backpacking but doesn't want to break the bank. And as you can kind of tell, it's a little bit windy out. There's wind just funneling right down this canyon here. So I will be guiding it out because I haven't tested this tent out in a lot of wind yet, and it's gonna be a good test today. It has some good guide out options here. It seems pretty stable, so I am excited to try it out and put it through its paces. So this is the sleeping pad, the REI Stratus insulated air pad. So it's a 20-inch wide pad, 2.5 inches thick, has an R value of 2.9 and 1 pound 5 ounces. So for the price, this seemed like a really good pad. So I'm excited to try it out in the field for the first time today. I've only tried it out in the comfort of my balcony and at home. And then since it is gonna get pretty cold tonight, down to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit or -6 degrees Celsius, I'm also gonna be putting my Nemo closed cell foam pad underneath this. So that'll give me a little bit more R value. As well as use my Hikenture pillow that I got here. And I'm also going to be using for installation my lighting equipment Enigma 20 quilt here. So for that I have some pad straps. And then I also brought an Enigma Apex quilt. So this is made with a synthetic material that I'm going to use in a 2-quilt system just in case it gets colder than I expect tonight. Something new that I picked up from Enlightened Equipment, they had pad straps before that had 2 clips on it, so you could clip both of your quilts into your sleeping pad. But what they added was these little additions that you can just put onto the pad straps that you already have. Instead of having to buy these separate fancy pad straps, you can just use these, and that makes it really a little bit more easy and convenient. And then a little tip, I put the pad straps around both my main sleeping pad here and then the foam pad underneath, and it just keeps them together nicely. I also used a label maker to add left and rights to my pad straps for my quilt here, because I find half the time I was putting the pad straps on incorrectly and then having to take them off and put them back on, and that was a big pain in my butt. So that's a really nice little hack if you also experience that problem. And I always get questions asking about gear that I don't specifically mention in my videos. So if you're interested in anything that you've seen that I didn't talk about, for instance, I get asked about my snow pants all the time. I'll leave a list of gear in the video description so you guys can go check that out. If there's something I missed, just leave me a comment and I'll make sure to add that to the list. Good morning, guys. Had an okay sleep last night. Got a little bit cold, and that was because my sleeping pad system wasn't necessarily warm enough for frozen ground conditions. And that addresses a topic that I see come up quite often, and that's why sleeping pads use an R value rating system instead of a temperature rating system. And it really comes down to the fact that your sleeping pad is mostly insulating you from the ground and not the air. So air temperature wouldn't be the best rating system to rate sleeping pads. You'll need a much warmer sleeping pad in the spring when the ground is still cold or potentially frozen, compared to late summer or fall when the ground has thawed out, even if the air temperature is the exact same. And last night was the perfect example of that. It only got down to just below freezing. I see temperatures like that most of the summer where I'm in the Canadian Rockies, and I can get away with an R value of 3 or higher usually when the ground isn't frozen. But when the ground is frozen like it was last night, then I'm needing something usually above 5. So I got pretty much everything inside of my tent all packed up. I'm wearing my hiking layers right now underneath my insulated layers. I like to get changed into my hiking clothes and then pack everything up inside the tent. I find that if I get changed in my hiking clothes and then do a little bit of work inside there, then I warm them up and I'm gonna be nice and toasty when I get out of the tent into the cold air, even though it's only just below freezing right now. It's gonna be a pretty quick start this morning. I'm gonna get the rest of my tent packed up, eat some craisins, have a protein bar. Then we're gonna hit the trail so I can start giving you guys some more tips on how to navigate in the backcountry. Something that I brought with me that I'm not gonna have to use on this trip is a Wag Bag. So this is a bag that if you have to go number 2 in the backcountry, you go into this and then you pack it out. And I think it's pretty much essential in the wintertime when the ground is frozen and you can't dig a cat hole, because if you're just pooping on the snow, then that's just gonna wash into the rivers and streams that you're gonna be drinking out of when you have spring melt. As well, we're in a bit of a canyon type scenario here where it's really hard to get 300 feet from this water course in order to do your business. So for those reasons, if I had to go poo today, I would have been going in the Wag Bag and packing it out with me. First tip of day 2 is to plan for conditions that you're going to be comfortable in, and then that you have the tools and equipment to actually tackle. I'm on a trip under winter conditions right now, so that means that I need the tools for that job. When you're planning, make sure you're paying attention to the weather, paying attention to the trail conditions that you're going out in, and then having the right equipment. For this trail today, from a hiking perspective, that means that I probably should be using my micro spikes. I didn't use them yesterday, but after some of those tricky, icy, hilly sections with the ropes, I realized I should probably be wearing these, so I'm gonna be putting these on for the trail today. So as we're starting the hike for the day, it brings up the second tip of the day, and that's making sure that you're aware of what your next checkpoint is. So for me right now, as I'm starting the hike, I know that my next checkpoint is in 2 kilometers, and that checkpoint is a turn in the trail. There's gonna be a fork, and I'm gonna have to take the right-hand turn. Your checkpoint could be anything from a turn in the trail to a landmark like a lake or a waterfall. And it's important to know what your checkpoint is so that if you're hiking and you know you're supposed to be hitting a checkpoint in 2 kilometers or like 30 minutes, 40 minutes, then as you're hiking, if also you've been hiking for an hour and a half and you haven't hit that turn or that landmark, then you know that you should stop, double check your maps, and take your bearings. And of all the tips that we've talked about this weekend, this one might be the most important because it can really save you from spending hours going down the wrong trail and really getting lost. This next tip may require you to step out of your comfort zone a little bit, but it's ask people that you see on the trail what the conditions up ahead might be like. The best source of information is people coming the opposite direction to you. They've just walked the trail that you're heading onto, and they have a ton of information and can really help you out. An example where this has been useful for me is I stopped and chatted with a couple people on a trail last summer, and they let me know that the bridge that looks like it should be on the trail is washed out, but that if you bushwhack upstream a little bit, there's another bridge that was newly put in. It just hasn't had a trail really well established to it. So that saved me having to ford a pretty deep river, and I was able to safely cross using the bridge. And when in doubt, double check. If you're a little uncertain of where you are on the trail or if you're on the right trail at all, then stop, double check your maps, your paper map if you need to, and make sure that you know where you are. If you guys watched this video and got a little bit intrigued about winter camping, then go check out the video that I'll post right up there where I take my girlfriend on her very first winter backpacking trip. If there's anything that you guys want me to elaborate more on with regards to navigation, let me know in the comments below and I can make some more videos talking about maybe how I use my watch a little bit more or how I use Gaia a little bit more. Thanks for watching, friends, and we'll see you next time.